Should interior designers need a license to work? How about personal trainers, dog walkers? What about you? Do you need a license to work? I'm Alan Barton. Stand by for the front page. Joining me in the studio today, Terry Jones, Associate Editor for Investors Business Daily, and Tom Bowden, an analyst for the Ayn Rand Center for Individual Rights. And also joining us, Clark Neily, Senior Attorney at the Institute for Justice in Washington, D.C. Clark, we're going to start with you. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So across the country, interior designers, cat groomers, hair braiders, florists, tattoo artists, these people have actually been lobbying state governments to create licensing requirements for their occupations. And the licensing requires fees, classes, licensing exam. Why is this? What's in it for the interior designers to be lobbying for this?
Well, it's all about keeping out competition. I mean, these lobbying groups have one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to essentially create a cartel in the occupation that they're a part of and try to make it as difficult as possible for other people to get into that occupation. And of course, as we know, as a matter of basic economics, that has the effect of reducing the number of people in the occupation and driving up wages. It's as simple as that.
And doesn't the state make out as well, because then they get to collect fees and make all these requirements and take their share, right?
Sure. I mean, it's very much hand in glove, and there's a kind of an unholy alliance between would-be bureaucrats and government officials who want to kind of find new ways to raise revenue, and the members of an occupation that would like to be regulated so they can keep out competition.
So the percentage of workers who need a state license to their jobs has risen from something like 5% in the 50s to almost 25% now. But sort of playing devil's advocate here, if you look at certain professions, you know, electricians, doesn't the state have a duty to protect its citizens against inept electricians and inept acupuncturists, stuff where a mistake could be cost property or even lives and the health of the citizens?
You can make a case for that, but two questions. First of all, is there any reason to believe that the government is actually very effective at weeding out incompetent practitioners? And I have real skepticism about that. And then second, is it really the case that having the government involved in licensing who can be a member of a given occupation actually does protect the public? And there's really not a great deal of economic or sociological literature to support that premise. So I think I'm quite skeptical about both premises. And we know for a fact that government licensing can be and is manipulated for anti-competitive purposes. So we need to keep that in mind as well.
The Institute of Justice is suing the state of Utah on behalf of Justina Clayton, who's a hair braider, apparently, who's not allowed to ply her craft. What do you think is at stake in a lawsuit like that and in this overall scheme of state licensing of professions?
Well, look, what I want to say is, you know, where do you start with all this preposterous licensing? I start with you have a right to earn a living. You have a right to earn an honest living, to offer your services on a free market, without misrepresenting yourself, and you've got to deliver the goods. So the state has to stand ready. If you breach your contract, if you're negligent, if you cause some kind of harm, or if you're an electrician and the house burns down, the state has to step in and punish you criminally if you had criminal conduct or a civil suit. But otherwise, the state needs to stay out, because the state doesn't own your life, and you should not have to be guilty until proven innocent and get a license to prove that you can do a job. The easiest way to see this principle is parenting. So there are abusive parents. There are parents who commit crimes against their children. Does that mean you should have a license to be a parent? You should have to be licensed and prove you can raise a child.
It's more difficult to adopt a dog than to have children. We were going to do a lab rescue out here, and we had to do like applications. People came to our house. They investigated the house, the yard, the security. I'm like, I'm having a kid next month. This is at that time. You didn't come here to check whether this child is going to be safe. But this adopted Labrador is really going to be safe. Terry, we'll go with you. In Texas, apparently hair salon shampoo specialists. These are the shampoo. This is not the stylist. The shampoo specialists. 150 hours of classes on the theory and practice of shampooing. They got to pass a written exam. So in Los Angeles, it takes, if you want to become a barber, it's full-time study. It's 12,000 years tuition, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think in terms of what Clark, in-studio Clark here is saying in terms of the state getting out of the way versus the possibility, again, being devil's advocate, that this encourages economic activity? If you do not have property being destroyed by incompetent electricians, and that means that they have to pass a certain thing, and that helps the overall economy, can you look at that from that standpoint and say, hey, it's a good thing?
No, it really doesn't help the overall economy. Actually, it's a major cost, and both Tom and Clark alluded to this. The cost is that if you take a licensed person and a non-licensed person, on average, there's about a 15% wage differential between the two, at least one study shows. And when you look at what this adds to the cost of goods and services in the economy, it's $116 billion a year. Which,
$116 billion, we borrow that every 3 seconds.
Yeah.
It's nothing,
yeah.
Terry. What are you talking about?
Although that comes out of directly out of your wallet, not out of somebody's borrowing. So it is something that adds to the cost of goods and services. And also, I gotta add, you know, as somebody in a profession that has several times tried to itself limit access to the journalism profession by these kinds of things. You know, this is a really nefarious notion, this idea that you can license somebody and keep other people out.
Journalists would be an interesting idea. I'm surprised they haven't tried that, since internet journalism has been such a provocative development to the established sort of the status quo. I'm surprised they haven't gone after licensing journalism.
They have tried, and what they've done, settled on instead is a credentialing process. Now you can't get hired many times unless you have a master's degree in journalism, which, sorry to say, folks, is utterly useless.
Clark, we're going to go to you. In El Paso, Texas, the city has passed a law prohibiting food vending trucks from operating or even stopping within 1,000 feet of restaurants or convenience stores. Wow, that's interesting. So what's at stake in that case?
Well, you know, once again, it's all about eliminating competition and trying to protect the economic interests of the brick and mortar businesses there. Now, I'm glad to say that our Texas chapter actually filed a lawsuit challenging that ordinance, and the city immediately hoisted the white flag and said that they would agree not to enforce it and, in fact, take it off the books. So the good news is, at least as far as the El Paso case goes, that law is coming off the books. But it's emblematic of something that we see across the country, which is state and local governments being absolutely interventionist and protectionist and stifling economic opportunity by enacting blatantly anti-competitive licensing laws. The courts ought to have a much bigger role than they are taking in evaluating these laws, subjecting them to meaningful judicial review, and eliminating the ones that don't advance some genuine public policy purpose. Unfortunately, the courts have been out of that business for about the last 75 years, and one of the major purposes of the Institute for Justice is to get them back in the business of protecting our economic liberty.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. That's all the time we have today. Viewers, you can find more about Clark Neely's work at ij.org. And viewers, we want to hear from you. What hoops do you have to jump through to get your license to work in your job? Click on the comment button below to join the discussion. Click on the share button, which now functions beautifully, to share this video with your friends. For Clark Neily and Tom, it's Tom Bowden, I know that, and Terry Jones, I'm Alan Barton. You have been watching The Front Page.